Sure.
Very good evening, dear Santosh, for your kind introduction. And thanks, Ready Lab people, for giving me this opportunity to be the speaker of the evening to talk about the basics of hypertension and diabetes, keeping the general population in view. Today, the target audience is general population and my patients. Okay, and basically, we are going to cover the hypertension and diabetes today, a vicious duo. Yeah, in fact, the question arises: are hypertension and diabetes a common duo? It's absolutely yes. And now, we just try to understand what blood pressure is. So, what is high blood pressure? The high blood pressure means the blood is pushing too hard against the walls of your blood vessels or the arteries. And another name for high blood pressure is hypertension. And the blood pressure is written as two numbers. The upper one, the top one, we call it the systolic blood pressure, that is when your heart beats. And the lower one, which is called the bottom number, is called the diastolic blood pressure, when your heart rests in between the two beats. And understanding the BP readings, the high blood pressure is systolic of 130 or above, or diastolic of 80 milligrams of mercury or above, and normal is considered to be systolic blood pressure of something around or less than 120, and the diastolic blood pressure something around or less than 80 millimeters of mercury. And now coming to the risk factors and the causes for this particular the blood pressure actually. So there are several causes. The main causes I am going to touch upon. The obesity is increasing in enormous proportions actually. Even India has become the capital of the obesity. And the high sodium, that is what we commonly call it as the salt, common salt. The common salt, the main element is sodium. The high intake of salt, the spicy foods, or the processed foods, or the junk foods, or the fast foods, they all contain the sodium in very high quantities. That is normal, our table salt is called, and the element that is present in that is called the sodium. And the other risk factors are like the consumption of alcohol in any way, whatever it may be, starting from the illicit liquor until the posh brands, whatever it may be. And smoking in any form, that is tobacco in any form actually. Let it be tobacco, let it be cigarettes, or let it be cigars, let it be the cigarettes, and the BDs, and even this particular the Jarda, the what we you people generally call the Simla, Kaini, Raja, and all the Jarda Pan, they all come under this particular the tobacco and the allied bad products. And the lack of physical activity, that is sedentary lifestyle, is growing enormously nowadays. The definition of luxury is eat and sleep and relax well. That is the definition, and thereby everybody is becoming the patient. They're suffering from diabetes or hypertension, or eventually the high cholesterol, which eventually this deadly triad leads to either the cardiovascular disease per se, maybe it is heart attacks or the strokes. So with that, we move on to the next slide. A quick glimpse on the diabetes also. And what is diabetes? Diabetes is characterized by high blood sugar, that is glucose levels, because your body can either not effectively use the insulin or does not produce enough insulin. So there are two mechanisms. Either your pancreas is not producing the enough quantities of insulin as per the body recommendations, or so called there is enough insulin that is secreted from the pancreatic beta cells is not being properly utilized in the body, which is called as insulin resistance. In your terminology, I would like to say that it's a sort of insulin corruption, that is at the level of the liver, at the level of the muscle, at the level of the fat, that is not being used properly. It's a sort of corruption actually. So that we call it the insulin corruption, that is called the insulin resistance. So that is the main reason why there is a imbalance between the demand and supply, thereby the patient eventually gets into a stage called diabetes. And the major types of diabetes, we divide them into like four categories. The first category we call it the type 1 diabetes, where the body doesn't produce the required insulin in the initial period, and eventually it leads to 100% failure of the beta cells, where there is not even a single unit of insulin produced in the body. That is called type 1 diabetes, which is usually seen in the children around the age group of 5 to 15. You can see even below 5, you can see even above the 15, below 18, or sometimes late manifestation you can see above 20 also. This has no treatment other than using insulin. So where there is no insulin in the body, you just have to use the insulin from outside. This is the first type of the category, type 1 diabetes. And the second is called type 2 diabetes. And this accounts the commonly the majority of the people, they do suffer from type 2 diabetes. It is seen from the age around around or above 18 years until any age like 80, 90, even we see at the 95 and 100 also. And so any point in between this is categorized as type 2 diabetes. The pathophysiology I have already told you. The defect is either the insulin is not being produced properly, that is some sort of insulin deficiency. And the second thing is though there is enough quantities of insulin being secreted in the body, that is not being utilized by the body fat, the muscle and the liver. That is called I said here, it's a sort of corruption, that is insulin corruption. Technical name is the insulin resistance. And more than 90 to 95% of the patients, out of 100 patients, they fall into this particular category of type 2 diabetes. Whereas type 1 diabetes, it is somewhere around some 5 to 10%. Now it is growing. Earlier, like 2-3 decades ago, we were not seeing that much of incidence of type 1 diabetes. And of late, we are seeing a steep rise in the incidence of type 1 diabetes also. And coming to the third category, it is called the gestational diabetes mellitus. That is, it's a either temporary condition or a permanent condition. 50% it is temporary, 50% eventually they develop, they just proceed on to type 2 diabetes. Still the diagnosis remains GDM only. Though they develop type 2 diabetes, the diagnosis is always the gestational diabetes mellitus. And the definition of gestational diabetes mellitus is any sort of dysglycemia, that is the increase in the blood glucose noticed for the first time during pregnancy is called gestational diabetes mellitus. And this can be managed by lifestyle modification, and 50% of the patients may require insulin. And there is the fourth category, which is called the other specific types, like the neonatal diabetes, the congenital diabetes, which is called the monogenic diabetes, and sometimes the maturity onset of diabetes of the young, that is the MODY 1 to 14, MODY 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, there are so many types. And systemic diseases like cystic fibrosis and amyloidosis may cause diabetes, that is categorized under the other specific types, and sometimes the tumors of the pancreas, there's the carcinoma of pancreas, which involves the head or the neck or the body or the tail, may result in this particular diabetes because of the this malignant tumors or neuroendocrine tumors like this particular glucagonoma or something else, and sometimes it so happens that the alcoholic acute pancreatitis or the alcoholic chronic pancreatitis or the chronic pancreatitis, acute and chronic, we find this particular diabetes, and the treatment is always insulin. And for MODY, the best drug is the sulfonylurea, works well for this particular MODY. And coming to the symptoms of diabetes, that is frequent urination, that is and the thirst, and the weight loss, that is unexplained weight loss. The patient will be apparently normal, no fever, no tuberculosis, no COVID, nothing and all of a sudden the patient loses weight without any comorbidities. So that is called classical description is the unexplained weight loss, and the changes in the vision, the fatigability, are more vulnerability to the opportunistic infections like the frequent genitourinary infections or the frequent candidiasis, either in the form of balanitis or posthitis in the males, or in the form of balanoposthitis in the males, or candidial vaginitis in females. That is the commonest presentation, and the consequences. So if the meticulously diabetes is not controlled, what are all the problems the patient is going to get in the complications? Maybe the stroke, that is what we call the paralysis, and the heart attacks, and the blindness, and the kidney failure, and the sensory neuropathy, that is tingling and numbness, and the burning sensation of the feet, commonly encountered by the patients for the first time. They are diagnosed as to be like type 2 diabetes, and because of the peripheral arterial disease, otherwise known as the peripheral vascular disease, it is called that leads to the narrowing of the blood vessels to the lower limbs, which leads to the incidence of increased incidence of amputations. And how to prevent diabetes, and how to prevent even hypertension? So both are same. It is the diet and the exercise, and reduction of weight, and cessation of smoking, and cessation of alcohol. So these are the main the strategic views of the preventing either the diabetes or the hypertension. And through medication we can control, and through regular screening we can monitor the disease. Slide is not moving. Slide is not moving.
Slides are not taken. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Okay, no, it's not. No, no, it's clear.
Yeah, thank you so much. And now we move on to, sorry for the technical glitch. Now we move on to this prevalence of hypertension and diabetes. So the prevalence of the DO, that is the diabetes and hypertension, the hypertension in the diabetic patients is somewhere around some 54%, and I think it's even more than that. And 63% diagnosed with hypertension are diagnosed with hypertension from the diabetic population. And the coming to this particular hypertension in diabetic patients, that is seen somewhere around the age group of 60 to 70 years, and where there is the diabetes, the duration being more than 10 years of duration. And hypertension and diabetes, why they are a vicious cycle, and we can clearly see that they are not separate, they are intermingled, the hypertension and the diabetes. And the diabetes, it's globally right now it is around some 285 million, and the projected rate by 2030 is around 440 million. And whereas coming to the hypertension, it is globally 972 million individuals. That is almost 1/4 of the globe is suffering from hypertension, and the projected rate is false. I mean, extremely sorry, the figure is not correct. By 2030, it is given as 1.56 million individuals. No, that is wrong actually. And the microvascular complications, more than 70% of the end stage renal disease is attributed to either diabetes or hypertension, and there is increased risk of retinopathy. And the effects on the heart, apart from the effects on the eye and the kidney, both the diabetes and hypertension, the deadly DO has got the common target oils. And the heart, it is 3 times more likely to have the coronary heart disease, and 2 times more likely to have the left ventricular hypertrophy, and 3 times more likely to develop the congestive heart failure. And when we come to this, the peripheral vascular disease or the peripheral arterial disease, diabetes increases the risk of peripheral vascular disease, that is narrowing of the larger vessels of the lower limbs, that is the lower part of the body, is by 2 to 4 times, and increased risk of the proportion to severity of BP. And it has got effect on the brain in the form of the paralysis, with an increased risk of more than 2 times than the normal individuals. And hypertension and diabetes, how is it linked? And can hypertension cause diabetes? So absolutely hypertension can cause diabetes, vice versa the diabetes can cause hypertension, because the background pathology is insulin resistance, even in the case of hypertension also. So people with elevated blood pressure are at an increased risk of diabetes, because 70% of them develop diabetes, 58% they developed a raised systolic blood pressure of 20 millimeters of mercury, and 52% they are seen with raised diastolic blood pressure of 10 millimeters of mercury. And how to prevent it, again we have discussed the healthy weight, maintaining the ideal body weight, that is maintaining the ideal body mass index, that is the proportion to the weight and the height is called the body mass index, and it should be meticulously maintained. For Indians, the cutoff is 23.5 kilograms per meter square, and maintaining a healthy weight, and going for a healthy diet, going for a regular exercise, and stopping this particular the sedentary life, and the reduction in the weight, and also the stopping of alcohol, and the stopping of smoking at any cost. Can diabetes cause high blood pressure? It's absolutely yes. Diabetes will damage the arteries, in turn, it leads to high blood pressure, and the complications are the blood vessel damage, and the heart attack, and the kidney failure, and the paralysis, and it goes on like that. And the major link are risk factors for this combination. The hypertension and diabetes, why it's a deadly duo? Because they target the same organs, like it produces the high cholesterol, which is called dyslipidemia, that leads to obesity, that is the excess weight, and that is related to the insulin resistance, that is we have already discussed, and there are more genetic factors also. So what are all the approaches for the treatment of diabetes and hypertension? The lifestyle modification to lower the blood pressure actually and diabetes, the treatment goal, the target blood pressure for the patients with diabetes should be no more than 130/80 milligrams per mercury. Forget about all the guidelines, the European guidelines or the American guidelines. Forget about everything. You just remember only one figure. It should not go, the blood pressure should never go beyond 130 of systolic blood pressure or the 80 of diastolic blood pressure. That's it. The diagnostic criteria, that they may differ, but as far as the target is concerned, even the European Society of Cardiology says that, the American Diabetes Association says the same thing, the American College of Cardiology, the American Association for the Clinical Endocrinologists, and the American Heart Association, and the International Society of Hypertension, and the British Society of Hypertension, and the American Society of Hypertension, they don't differ from this particular target. It is nothing but less than 180 bar, less than 80 millimeters of mercury at any cost. So you can see the lifestyle modifications and potential reductions in the systolic and diastolic blood pressures. So you can clearly see that 4.5 kilogram weight loss leads to the reductions, the respectively the 7 the systolic and the 6 diastolic respectively. And the American Heart Association dietary approaches to stop hypertension, and that is called the DASH diet. The dietary approaches to stop hypertension, that reduces by 11.4 and 5.5 respectively. And the restriction of alcohol, I don't say restriction, you have to completely abstain yourself from alcohol, and that is going to have a huge impact. And exercise daily has got a good impact, you can see the figures. And the restriction of dietary sodium to less than 2.3 grams, it is not 2.4 grams, it is 2.3 grams. That is going to have a minimal effect on the reductions of the either the systolic or the diastolic blood pressures. And what is DASH diet? That is the DASH, that's what I said. The dietary approaches to stop hypertension, it is called the DASH diet, that is proposed by the American Heart Association actually. A DASH diet means eating the following things: high consumption of vegetables and fruits, 4 to 5 servings each of vegetables and fruits, and high consumption of whole grains, and 7 to 8 servings of whole grains, and oatmeal over corn starch or the cornflakes. The cornflakes generally, what people do the mistake is, like they tend to take cornflakes. It has become a modern breakfast, but never take cornflakes. It is very high in calories. Replace that corn starch or corn, whatever it may be, with oats. The oatmeal is very good because oat has got the lowest glycemic index as well as the glycemic load, as well as the oat has got lot of fiber. See, the main principle is like the moderate the consumption is the lean meat. The 2 servings of lean meat such as chicken, fish, and rabbit meat we don't get it, okay. But and the beef and pork and the red meat is to be avoided at any cost. That is, whether it is sheep or goat or lamb, or the beef or the pork, you have to sacrifice if at all you want to have your blood pressure and diabetes under control. And if at all you don't want to proceed or progress on to the complications like myocardial infarction, that is heart attack and the paralysis. And the low consumption diets are the less salt and the saturated fats and the sugar. You are supposed to almost cut down all these things. And basically what DASH diet means is the very low sodium, that is the table salt, very low sodium. The daily intake is 2.3 grams of sodium, that is 5 grams of teaspoon, not tablespoon. Tablespoon is 15 grams, whereas the teaspoon is always it is 5 grams. 5 grams of tablespoon of table salt has got this particular 2.3 the quantities of the elemental sodium. So that is required even in certain conditions like heart failure or the kidney failure. We still further reduce it to 1.5 grams of sodium, and sometimes we totally restrict when the patient lands up in either the end stage kidney disease, the name itself says end stage kidney disease, or the total heart failure, the congestive cardiac failure. That's what the right ventricular, right sided heart failure and the left sided heart failure. So the number one is the low sodium, the first component of DASH diet. Second component is the high potassium. High potassium is available in plenty of potassium is available in fruits like the banana and the citrus fruits, especially the oranges and all, the pineapple, the grapes, the mango, you name anything, it has got potassium. So increase taking this the fruits in plenty to prevent the diabetes or to prevent this particularly the scenario of hypertension when it comes to DASH diet. And the third thing is that you have to increase the fiber quantity, which is very rich in the vegetables, the leafy vegetables and the fruits and the pulses and the whole grains, and this particular foods like oats and all, they are very rich in fiber. So take lot of fiber and avoid the habit of peeling the vegetables, peeling the fruits. So please take whatever is not supposed to be peeled, like the bitter gourd, you don't need to peel. Everybody will peel bitter gourd. The skin of bitter gourd will be peeled mercilessly. The bottle gourd and whatnot, the ridge gourd, everything is being taken off. That is the one which has got the highest quantities of this particular fiber. So intake of fiber helps you in many ways. The intake of fiber will reduce your blood sugars, reduce your blood pressures, that reduces the incidence of cholesterol, that reduces the incidence of heart attacks, that reduces the incidence of strokes, that is paralysis, that reduces the constipation. And the last one I am going to tell is the major advantage of the fiber, that is going to prevent the large bowel cancer, that is the colorectal carcinoma is only prevented by this fiber diet. If you eat the fiberless diet, the chicken and mutton, ultimately you will end up in this particular large bowel cancer. The colorectal cancer is a gift for you if you take the non-vegetarian food in plenty and the spicy food in plenty. So the sample exercise prescription plan for hypertensive patients. See, that is, any exercise will have 3 phases. The warm up stage and the main exercise stage and the cooling down stage. So the warm up is around some 5 to 20 minutes, and that is walking, stretching. and intensity is light to moderate, and 20 to 40 minutes of warm up, the aerobic exercises moderate to vigorous. The main exercise, that is the 20 to 30 minutes of muscle stretching exercises, these I have mentioned are the main exercises, apart from the 5 to 20 minutes of warm up, that is either walking or stretching, and cool down is again 10 minutes, and that is stretching the muscles that were used, and you need to just relax, that is cool down phase. And the time period, I'll tell you that every Indian should walk for 60 minutes on each day of the week, that is 7 by 7, in contrast to the western scenario where they can walk only to the period of 150 minutes a week, that is 30 minutes into 5 days, and they can have the 2 walking free, exercise free holidays. But as we Indians have the highest incidence of insulin the resistance, we are supposed to walk for at least 1 hour almost on all the days, 365 days in a year, except on the sick days. That's all. When you are not feeling well, you can skip that exercise. Barring that, there is no exception for going for a walk. Avoid, please try to avoid sedentary lifestyle, and more of that, please try to avoid sitting in front of the laptop, sitting in front of the desktop, sitting in front of the TVs, and in front of the mobiles, and eating enormous food without counting the calories. So please stop all this nonsense to prevent this the incidence of diabetes or the hypertension. And whenever your doctor says you have to exercise, you make very clear, you talk to the doctor what type of exercise suits to your particular body. And most of the times walking is the best exercise to the best of my knowledge. And if there is a provision, you have facilities of swimming is the best exercise on the earth. If you are young enough without any comorbidities, you can play games like shuttle, you can play volleyball, basketball, anything, cricket, whichever game you are interested, whatever game you are interested, you can just go for that. And the signs when to stop exercising are stop exercising and reach out for help when you experience any one of the following, like pain in the chest, and the pain in the left arm, that is radiating from the chest to the left shoulder and to the left arm and to the left fingers, and shortness of breath. Whenever you feel that you are not able to take your breath normally, so your breath when it is not normal, you become breathless, then it is high time you have to stop your exercise. Or sometimes the classical heart attack, the pain may radiate to the jaw or to the neck. That is the classical presentation. And though we don't see the classical presentation nowadays, but whenever you encounter with this the pain, the chest pain radiating to the neck or the jaw or to the left arm, or you have to stop that particular exercise. And whenever there is irregular heartbeat and the vision is blurred and you are feeling dizzy and nausea, you have to stop the exercise, and you have to consult your doctor. And if I have diabetes, how can I prevent the emergence of hypertension? What can you do? First thing is control your blood sugars, stop smoking, stop alcohol, and a healthy diet with minimal salt, and exercise, and weight reduction, and visit your doctor regularly and take the medicines regularly. And know the nuances, that is metabolic syndrome. So what do you mean by metabolic syndrome? So then what is metabolic syndrome? Metabolic syndrome components are high blood triglycerides and low levels of the good cholesterol, that is HDL cholesterol, and the insulin resistance at the level of liver, at the level of muscle, at the level of fat, and the high blood pressure and the obesity, that is especially the central obesity, these are the components of metabolic syndrome. And the next question is why we should be scared of this particular metabolic syndrome. The metabolic syndrome is a collection of the conditions that often occur together and increase your risk of developing diabetes, developing this particular stroke, developing the heart disease. So, keeping these things in view, to prevent the heart attacks, to prevent the paralysis, the incidence of paralysis, you have to cautiously and meticulously control and prevent and control this particular metabolic syndrome, what we call generally MS. And reducing your risk of metabolic syndrome. So that is by doing, I said, lose your weight first. At least the rough calculation I would like to tell you is lose 7% of your body weight. The present body weight, assuming that your body weight is 70 kilos, 7 into 7% is around 4.9. That is, if you lose 5 kilos and you come down to 65 kilos, your chances of developing diabetes will be drastically reduced, your chances of developing hypertension will be drastically reduced, and your chances of developing this particular metabolic syndrome will be drastically reduced, or it becomes at least delayed if you can reduce your body weight to the tune of the 7% in the existing body weight. At least you may prevent it, you may delay it by 10 years, and thereby delaying the complications for 10 years will fetch you in the long run. And exercise regularly and take balanced diet to keep your blood pressure and cholesterol and blood sugar levels under control. And that's what I said, all the time give up the sugar, the jaggery and the sweets, and reduce the intake of salt, no extra table salt. Give up taking the pickles. The Indians are very fond of the preserved pickles, the poppets and the frams and the chips and all the potato chips. They are too bad for your health, especially the French fries and the potato in any form is forbidden for the patients who are suffering from either diabetes or hypertension. And you have to stop smoking, and there is no limitation of alcohol. I mind you once again, please stop alcohol. Nothing. It's mandatory that you should stop smoking, you should stop alcohol. And be responsible for your health. That is the lifestyle modification. Lifestyle modification is nothing but diet and exercise. The healthy diet and the healthy exercise is called lifestyle modification. An intensified form of this particular lifestyle modification is called the therapeutic lifestyle changes, where it has got the LSM as one component, that is diet and exercise. The third component will be reduction in the weight. Fourth component is cessation of alcohol. The fifth component is cessation of weight. If you can do that, and certainly you are going to prevent either the diabetes or the hypertension or the metabolic syndrome. Thereby you can prevent the complications. That's what I mentioned. Either the microvascular complications like retinopathy, the kidney disease and the neuropathy, and the macrovascular complications per se, the heart attack and the paralysis and the lower limb large vessel disease, which leads to amputations. And diet, when it comes to diet, do's and don'ts. Okay, the recommended salt intake in a day, like 2/3 of a teaspoon, 1500 milligram of sodium per day if you have high blood pressure. And home cooked meals can help control salt intake. Always taste the food before adding salt, and avoid salt after the food is cooked. This is very, very important. Majority of our Indian people, they have the habit of adding salt to the cooked food. Never add the salt to the cooked food. Though whether it is less in salt, you just have it just like that. But please don't mix up the excess table salt. So best to avoid is to stop the alcohol. I don't say it is limit alcohol. And they eat the right fats. That is the good fats. The the soy oil, the canola, and even the groundnut oil is very good, except palm oil and except this particular the coconut oil, because they are very rich in this particular saturated fatty acids. So all the soy oil or the canola oil or the rice bran oil or the sunflower oil, even the groundnut oil which is not refined, is very good for your health. That has got more of the monounsaturated fatty acids, MUFA, or the polyunsaturated fatty acids, PUFA. They are very less in the saturated fatty acids. Whereas the coconut oil and this particular the palm oil, they have got the highest quantity of the saturated fatty acids, which are not good. That is trans fatty acids. They are not good. And you have to try avoid the butter, and you have to increase the taking fish, because fish has got alpha 3 omega fatty acids and alpha 6 omega fatty acids, which in turn reduces the incidence of this particular heart attacks and the paralysis. So flax seeds, that is what you call the avise ginjalu in Telugu, is nothing but flax seeds. And you have to avoid the fried baked foods with and you have to avoid the whole milk and cheese. They have to be avoided. How to get your blood pressure checked? So the first step in controlling your blood pressure is knowing your numbers and the frequency and an accurate BP reading. Here is how to do it right, whether you are at clinic or at home. And before checking your blood pressure, and before 30 minutes at least, you should not smoke. Even 30 minutes, I don't say not 30 minutes, you should never smoke. And you have to abstain yourself from taking caffeine, that is coffee is not allowed prior to 30 minutes. Any hard beverage is not supposed to be taken prior to checking this particular blood pressure, and no exercise prior to 30 minutes. And before 5 minutes, in the 5 minutes before your BP is taken, you have to sit still. That is, you're putting back onto the back of the chair with relaxed arms, and your feet must touch the floor. You should sit very quietly, calmly. That is for a period of 5 minutes, so that your blood pressure settles down and the real figures they come out then only. And during the blood pressure is checked, and make sure the cuff, that is what is tied to your arm, should be of the right size and the right place, and keep your cuffed arm on the flat surface, like the doctor's table, at the level of heart, and it should be, like I said, it should be at the level of heart, and sit upright, back straight, fat feet flat on the floor, and don't talk. And after that, and after 1 minute of checking the blood pressure, wait for 1 minute and again recheck your blood pressure, and you take the average of the two readings, and consider taking a third reading if you are not sure of it, and keep a log. Actually, you have to maintain a log and bring to the doctor each checkup, and bring your device yearly to make sure it is accurate. That is what is called the process of calibration. You must get it calibrated at least once in a year. And how to monitor your blood glucose levels? How to do it? A blood sample is taken and put on the test strip, that is the glucometer. Strip is put to the blood glucose meter. A logbook is helpful in maintaining, as far as like hypertension, you have to maintain a log for every this thing. The diabetic patient should maintain the logbook, and they should keep on recording whether it is fasting or the 2 hours post breakfast, it is pre-lunch or post-lunch, pre-dinner, or post dinner, something like that. You have to maintain all the parameters and aim for your target range. The target range before a meal is somewhere around, it should be between 80 to 120, and preferably even 80 to 130 also holds good. And at bedtime between 100 and 140. And majority of the patients with diabetes check their glucose reading at least 4 times a day before meals and at bedtime. And the myths and the facts about diabetes. The myth is no one in my family has diabetes, so I don't get the diabetes. So the fact is family history is a risk factor for diabetes. However, many people with diabetes have no close family members with diabetes. So it's a myth only. The fact is that anybody is at risk of developing diabetes. To tell you very honestly, all Indians are at risk of developing diabetes and hypertension because of this insulin resistance and the sedentary life and affluent eating and the obesity. And the second myth is I have borderline diabetes, so I don't need to worry. Fact is, pre-diabetes is the term used for those whose blood sugars are not in the diabetes range, but they are too high to be called normal. So it is a stage called pre-diabetes, that is in between normal and the diabetes, something like a cat on the wall, and we call it pre-diabetes. Pre-diabetes is very important because the pre-diabetes carries the same risk of developing the cardiovascular disease, that is either the myocardial infarction or the strokes, at par with this particular diabetic patients. So the myth is it is not safe to exercise with diabetes, and the fact is getting regular exercise is an integral part of managing diabetes. And hypertension myths and facts. The myth is high blood pressure runs in my family, there is nothing I can do to prevent it. And the fact is lifestyle choices have allowed many people with a family history of high blood pressure to avoid it themselves. And the myth is I use kosher and sea salt when I cook instead of regular table salt. What our people generally say that Saindava Lavanam in Telugu, and they are under impression that that is very far superior to this our table salt and nothing like that. They are low sodium alternatives. And fact is chemically kosher salt and the sea salt are the same as the table salt, 40% sodium, and they count the same towards the total sodium consumption. And the third myth is I read that wine is good for heart, which means I can drink as much as I want. The fact is, if you want to drink alcohol, including red wine, do it in moderation. But my suggestion in this thing is, and no alcohol, no red wine. Nothing is going to help you. It is all bullshit. Please stop taking anything. No alcohol, please. No smoking. And be responsible for your own health. You are responsible for your health. You cannot blame somebody else for your health. And the key points how to be responsible are increase your physical activity, maintain a healthy weight, and decrease the salt in your diet, and limit alcohol and do not smoke, and monitor your blood pressure and home sugar at the blood sugar at home, and take your medicines very properly. That's what the thing is. And with that, I thank you so much for your patient listening. And once again, thanks to Reddy Labs for giving me this opportunity to be the speaker of this evening. I am Dr. Sepuri Krishna Mohan, endocrinologist at my own center, Sepuri Diabetes and Endocrine Center, Kurnool. If you have any doubts and questions, you can please type your questions or the queries in the chat box so that I can answer your queries.
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, we are done with the presentation.
Yeah, finished.
Sir, there are few questions in the chat box.
Yeah, please.
Please open the chat box.
Sir, I need to. Yeah, 1 second. is not touched right. Okay. Yeah, Swati, thank you so much for your explanation. Very easy to understand about IBP. Thank you so much, Ma Swati. Sir, recently my mother, as per my doctor's suggestion, sorry, Swati again wrote, sir, recently as per my doctor's suggestion, I bought a digital BP machine. I took reading yesterday, it showed 67 bar 46. I am confused, I don't have symptoms now. Swati, don't worry, this is a digital machine that gives you so many up and down readings. So the best method is to have 3 readings with 1 minute apart, so that you take the average of the 3 so that you get your correct this thing. So your BP will not be so low. So don't worry about it. Sometimes the machines, there are so many companies manufacturing the machines, so that the calibration is not done. The accuracy is to the lowest when the machine is too cheap. Actually, I suggest Swati to go for the Omron blood pressure machine, which is supposed to be the standard one. Even that also, there is a formula that is 7 into 2 into 2 for home blood pressure monitoring. That is, the first 7 is measure the blood pressure on the 7 days of a week. That is the first 7. Next 2 is whenever you take the readings, you have to take it twice a day. That is, early in the morning, the moment you get up from the bed, you have to take 1 reading, take 2 readings and take average of it. And at the same time, take in the evening or night, so that the next 2 is morning and evening. And the last 2 is all the time take 2 readings and you take the average of it. That is the 7 into 2 into 2 formula of home blood pressure monitoring. I think, is that all? I don't find any questions.
Yes, doctor. Yeah. There are no more questions.
Yeah.
So, sir, with your permission, can I end the session, sir?
Yeah, please. Once again, thanks for the participants' patience listening. Thank you so much.